Welcome back. My name is Kit.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Streaming Things. Today on the show, we're covering American Psycho, the film from the year 2000.
In the year 2000.
Directed and co-written by Mary Herron and based on the controversial Bret Easton Ellis novel of the same name. This is a Patreon-demanded movie. Luke and Sarah?
Luke and Sarah.
Thank you so much for suggesting this film. If you'd like to suggest a film or mandate that we cover it, there's a tier for that, TIER, on patreon.com/streamingthings. And that's a fun hoot and a holler. You can also join the Discord via Patreon, all kinds of fun perks and upgrades you can get. And if you can't afford to do that, we more than understand. Just please rate and review the show on Spotify or wherever else you're listening to this.
Do it.
It should be said, I saw some debate in the Discord. If you would like to see the video version of the show, it is helpful to us if you just watch it on Spotify, absolutely. But, you know, no shade if you want to venture on over to the tumbleweed of the YouTube, because Steve does put a lot of work into that. You can watch it there as well. Because a lot of people were like, how do we help best? Where do you want us to watch it?
Yeah.
Spotify.
Spotify is the number one place we prefer people to ingest the content. But if not everyone has Spotify, so that's okay if you can't do that.
I have Apple Music.
We learned about that earlier this week.
On Monday, yeah. So no hate.
Spotify, streaming service, only $10.99 a month. I actually don't know. I can't remember what the percentages of all that is.
It's on auto pay.
Yeah, it's on auto pay. Whatever.
I subscribe to the free trial of premium. I just can't get into the UI.
Really?
I don't listen to as much digital music as you might think I do, is the thing, too. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Do you listen to a lot of non-digital music?
I do have some vinyls and whatnot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what I mean, I guess, is that, I don't queue up I don't have like a playlist or anything like that. I have a gym thing that I do, alternative workout mix, which is just like 90s and early 2000s alternative rock, geared toward gym stuff.
Right.
A lot of Paramore and stuff on there, getting my flex on.
Yeah. Clanging
Other
and
than
banging.
that, it's podcasts when I'm driving and stuff 90% of the time. But recently, Olivia Rodrigo. Yeah, Olivia Rodrigo.
Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already canceled from Monday for saying you like her more than Taylor Swift, so.
Guts. I had the guts to say that. But yeah, we're talking about American Psycho today. So if you've never listened to the show before, we talk about our overall thoughts on the film, not only what it was like to watch it this time, but what our history with the film is, our relationship throughout our lives with this film. And then we'll do our best screen by screen, play by play, scene by scene recap, culminating in what I think will be the best podcast you've ever heard. I think I can safely say that.
Yeah, safely. I mean, that's not a hot take at all. That's just science, baby.
It's just scientific method. That's my hypothesis. Now let's conduct the experiment.
Let's do it.
Bitches. Get your Petri dishes out.
Science, bitch.
It's Jesse Pinkman with his own like Bill Nye the Science Guy show.
I'd watch that, actually. That actually sounds great.
Bill, bitch.
Bill. Remember that dude?
Let bro cook.
Remember that dude in the Bill Nye show? There's always that like voice, that
like
voice,
really low voice.
Bill. That's like all he basically did.
Yeah. The disembodied, like confused guy.
Yeah.
Yes, I do actually. Any hoozle. The plot description from IMDb is thus. A wealthy New York City investment banking executive, Patrick Bateman, hides his alternate psychopathic ego from his coworkers and friends as he delves deeper into his violent, hedonistic fantasies.
Ooh.
That's American Psycho. Steve?
Before you ask me the question you're inevitably going to ask me, Chris, I have to ask you a question.
Okay.
Because of this movie...
how the turntables have turned.
Because of this movie, how often do you mistakenly refer to Jason Bateman as Patrick Bateman? Because I do it semi-regularly, and he seems like a pleasant man, unlike Patrick Bateman.
There's also Norman Bates. I mean...
Well, yeah, that's obviously where this name comes from, is Norman Bates, but...
Yeah.
This movie has ruined Jason Bateman for me in terms of like the accuracy and confidence I say his name.
Also, his like... frequent typecast persona, Jason Bateman, pretty similar to a narcissist kind of psychopathic person.
I could see them remaking this movie today with Jason Bateman as Patrick Bateman.
Yeah. His little brother, Patrick. Oh. That was my wedding ring. Back off, ladies. It's back on.
For a hot second there, people were like slamming on the door out front.
Storming the gates.
Oh, finally.
Let me get them cheeks. Back off, Ruben. I'm back again. I'm taken again.
Are we going to have a competition to see who can name drop Ruben the most this week?
You're winning. we just get in these modes where we're obsessed with our patrons.
Yeah.
And
We just single one of them out. And
he's in the revolving door right now.
He shouldn't have put on a wig. No one cared who Ruben was until he put on the wig.
That's true. That Daenerys wig opened my eyes.
Oh, man.
I'm like, hello, sir. But yeah.
Go spaghettis.
So Steve, what have you ever read the book, the Bret Easton Ellis novel?
I have not. Have you?
No.
Okay.
We are unqualified to discuss this. Moving on. What is your... I know you love this film. It's one of your faves, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes, this movie is one of my favorites. If someone came into a room and they were like, this is what this movie is about, a psychopath who is a murderer, a rapist, he's misogynistic, he's xenophobic, he's homophobic, he's a Wall Street bro, he kills a lot of people and nothing happens to him, I would be like, it's a slasher movie, it can be considered horror. I would be like, no, that sounds like a terrible movie. That sounds like a movie I would not jive with. Why are you talking to me? Get out of my house. But in all honesty, I fucking love this movie. I think there is, even though there's all this dark, gross, disgusting shit that's happening in this movie, there is this air of deadpan humor that coats everything that makes it more digestible, at least for me. And Christian Bale, who plays Patrick Bateman in this movie, is absolutely incredible in this movie. I think this is my favorite movie, my favorite performance of his. He's so twisted, but at the same time hilarious. And it's got a stat cast. I love the direction. I love the way they use... This movie really feels like a movie that was filmed in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's hard to do, I feel like. They really capture the tone. And I just really, really like this movie, even though it's probably the most twisted movie that I like. It's maybe my favorite slasher movie of all time. Would you consider this a slasher movie? I don't even know. It's more of a dark comedy, right?
Yeah, I would not. I see it as a black comedy. It's a dark comedy, satire. But it's funny because audiences at the time, even critics, didn't know how to take this movie.
Yeah.
It was not received well. Mary Harron told a story of watching this movie at the film. I think it premiered at TIFF, somewhere like that. And they were the only people laughing. Like Christian Bale and Mary Harron. That's it.
Yeah.
Everyone else, stunned silence. After the movie, everybody was kind of walking out, ashen-faced. What?
What is this? It
took like a decade for people to understand that this movie was supposed to be funny.
Right.
And now it's considered hilarious. People love it. It's a cult classic. But it took a while.
It did. And I think a lot of that kind of goes towards how the book itself was also mired in controversy. The book is my understanding, it's a lot more graphic than the movie is. And it was like the 53rd most banned book in America in the 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know Bret Easton Ellis is himself a controversial figure. I used to listen to his podcast a lot.
Did you really?
Yeah. And it led me down some... I'm not going to call it like a right-wing pipeline or anything, but I mean, there's some ideas in there that led me astray, you know?
Sure.
I remember his review of Moonlight was like, it was cowardly because there's no sex in it. Like, oh, you want to make a movie about that's controversial, you know, that's brave about a black gay man and then let him fuck. And like, I was listening to him talk for hours and I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm like 26 or whatever. And he talked about how, people are just acting like they love it as much as they do because they're scared to say like the black movie's not good. You know, I was like, this Bret Easton Ellis guy is a little kind of an asshole, you know?
Well, yeah, in an interview, so for a long time, he would say he based the character of Patrick Bateman off his father, but then in more recent years, he's been like, actually, I based it off of me, and I was too, self-conscious to tell people I based this awful, cruel character on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. He doesn't do anything you'd want to be associated with in the movie.
Right.
Bro is literally me.
This movie has a very interesting, the way it came to be. Well, actually, before we get into that, Chris, what's your history with this movie?
So actually, I think this is only the second time I've ever seen this movie.
Really?
And the first time would have been in the early aughts when it first came out, or a few years after, because in 2000 I was 12. But I think I saw this movie by the time I was 17 or so. And I think I had the initial reaction in 2005 or so, 2006 of most people, where I was like, I don't understand it. He should have probably gotten some kind of comeuppance. You know, what even is this movie? And it wasn't until I got really into film criticism and content creation and trying to be in the space of having opinions publicly on movies in the last 6 years or so that I realized people fucking love this movie. And I had seen it technically, but was unable to contribute until clips started to pervade the internet over the last 5 years or so, specifically. Like the scene where he gets where they compare business cards is frequently on TikTok and Reels and stuff, right?
Yes.
And that scene to me now is so fucking funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the Huey Lewis in the News bit, all that stuff is frequently used in clips, and it's so obviously funny. But at the time, as a whole, it so obviously wasn't, you know? So watching it this time, I had a great time. I was able to understand why people view this movie the way that they do so much more. I never disliked the movie. I want to be clear about that. But I didn't see it as like this, like, if anything, I thought the satire was kind of on the nose. You know what I mean? But there's so much subtlety going on in this movie. And it's one of those movies like Fight Club that I think struggles to find its core audience. Like a lot of the people who support this movie and Fight Club don't know the movie's making fun of them.
Right.
And it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, because it makes you, if you like the movie, you're coupled with them now. And like, you know what I mean? You're like, I
was doing research for this movie today, and I came across a bunch of like YouTube shorts that were like, the top 10 coolest lines that Patrick Bateman says, and it's all the misogynistic shit that he does. I'm like, that's not what you're supposed to take away from this movie at all.
I think that's cool at all.
No, he's the villain of this movie.
Well, there's hardly any good people. Maybe Chloe Sevigny, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that soon. But yeah, I had a great time. I read some interesting interviews with Mary Harron, not only where she talked about the initial reception of it, but it's fascinating that like she made her first feature film at 42 years old. And this was her second film. Her first movie was a movie about Andy Warhol.
I Shot Andy Warhol?
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was fascinating. That's pretty late in the film biz, you know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I went through her IMDb page because I remember like, oh yeah, Mary Harron did direct this. You know, I don't know if I've actually seen another movie she's directed, and I haven't. Like I've only heard of the Notorious Betty Page, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But I never watched that movie.
Also written by Guinevere, her co-writer on this.
Did you know that Guinevere is Elizabeth in this movie?
Who's Elizabeth?
It's the woman that he picks up for the second date with Christy.
Oh, that's the one I was just talking about, where she's like, "This wine tastes funny."
Yeah,
really,
the redhead. Yeah, that's Guinevere.
Wow, interesting.
She's also an actress as well as a writer.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've seen any other Mary Harron movies either. She's got one coming out this year, I believe.
But this movie is so smart and dripping in the satire and metaphor. Like you said, it's a bit on the nose at the time, or all the time. But I do like what it's trying to get at. How like I guess one of the main things it's bringing up is how like yuppie culture, this late stage capitalism kind of breeds these people who only care about what's on the surface. They don't really care about the quality of a person. Everyone is just a commodity to each other. Like, how can we use one another? There's this ongoing bit where no one can like really recognize anybody because they just don't really care about you. They just care about what they
their
can,
close
what you can give you.
friends. They get each other mixed up all the time.
Yeah. And it's and to them, whenever like when they're like, "Oh, weren't you with this person last week?" and he's like, no, it was this person." It's believable that he wouldn't know that because they're all like, "I don't care about anybody I'm with."
Yes.
And there's a
Even
bunch
his
of stuff
lawyer
like that.
at the end thinks he's someone else, and they all secretly hate Patrick Bateman. You know,
Yeah.
talk shit about him to his face.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a movie that is pretty obviously about the violence that Patrick Bateman performs in this film is a metaphor for the violence that capitalism performs on society, right? Like, especially when he does it to sex workers and
The homeless.
vagrants, animals, which is terrible to watch in this movie. All that stuff is pretty obvious. Like it's just a metaphor for greed, especially in 80s Wall Street, which is like synonymous with coked out greed, you know?
Right.
But even with where we're at today, I think this movie unfortunately resonates more than ever.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
With the labor movement that's currently happening and the huge wealth gap that we're experiencing.
And plus, and I'm excited to get into it with you on the ending of this movie because it is a little bit of a controversial, ambiguous, quote unquote ending.
I was going to ask you about that as well. What you thought about that?
But it kind of plays into the fact like a lot of people don't like how he gets away with it, pretty much. But really, that's today. If you're wealthy, you can probably get away with a lot of shit, and people just use your status as some way to overlook what you're doing.
Not only that, it's not like because a lot of people think it was all just a dream ending.
Right.
None of that even actually happened.
Right.
I don't think that's what I think he really killed all those people.
Yeah.
And I think Mary Harron has said that's true.
Well, Mary
the fact
Harron,
that the lawyer thought he ate lunch with Paul Allen in London is more evidence that he doesn't even know who Paul Allen is.
Yeah, and he doesn't know who Patrick Bateman is either.
Right.
Because he's talking to him.
That's the way I took it.
Well, I don't know if we should get into this now or towards the end of the coverage, but yeah, I agree with you that it's also he actually did kill those people, and it's the fault of this world that he's allowed to operate in unobstructed that allows this type of monster to live in a society like this that's superficial and doesn't care about. Because the only people that really see him for who he is at the end. It's Jean, and she's the only one who isn't completely given into this capitalistic facade.
Yeah.
She's the only character in the movie that hasn't given into that, and she's the one who finally sees what he is on the inside.
Yeah, and it's so I don't even see him as getting away with it. Like he tries to have guilt. He tries to turn himself in.
He even says that he doesn't get the catharsis he wants of getting caught.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's robbed of that.
Nobody around him cares. Mm-hmm. And I love that throughout the movie, he'll tell people, like, I like to cut open hookers and see what they're like inside. And they're like, so where do you want to eat dinner?
Yeah.
Patrick?
I'm in murders and what's
executions.
And executions. Like, what's mergers and acquisitions like?
Yeah. So let's dive in. We can move pretty quickly through this, I think. There's more meat and taters there to talk about at the end. I do want to mention that in doing my research last night, I never knew that in 2002, they created a sequel.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Which was an unrelated screenplay.
Yep.
Completely written, had nothing to do with this, that they tacked a vague resemblance to American Psycho onto. It was a script called The Girl Who Wouldn't Die. But this movie American Psycho 2 stars Mila Kunis and William Shatner.
Wild.
I wish Andy was here to say, I hardly know her.
I hardly know her.
But that is the wildest sounding horror movie.
Have you read the plot summary of that movie?
Vaguely.
It's bananas.
I delved into it. I kind of, but people on Twitter told me it's not even so bad. It's good. It's really not worth your time at all.
Yeah. It was a direct to DVD or direct to video release.
I guess. American Psycho 2, All American Girl.
They only tie it into this movie because there's like the first scene, Patrick Bateman's trying to kill her babysitter as a young, when Mila Kunis's character is a young child, and she like saves her babysitter by stabbing him with a spike or something.
Yeah.
And that's like, she ran into Patrick Bateman's
sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah. The plot says a girl named Rachel Newman has developed a taste for murder and will stop at nothing to become a college professor's assistant. I guess the professor is William Shatner.
Yes.
Oh my God. It was co-written by Bret Easton Ellis. He's got a writing credit on it. Oh, just because of the book.
Yeah. Just because of the book.
But it's so nothing to do with the book. It was a completed screenplay. And they added like a voiceover and a mention of Patrick Bateman, and that was it.
Yeah.
From what I understand. I got to watch it.
There's actually another Easton book that was made into a movie that actually takes place in the same universe. What's that other movie called? I'm trying to look it up real quick, but I don't have it clearly labeled in my notes. But it's another movie where the main character of that movie is Patrick Bateman's brother, but the movies aren't related to each other. That's just in the book, these two characters were brothers, and they have two separate books made about the two brothers.
The only other movie I know of his was The Canyons with Lindsay Lohan, and in the 80s he did one called Less Than Zero.
Let me look up his novels real quick. It's Rules of Attraction.
Oh, yeah. Wow, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if you look, so let me bring up IMDb, Rules of Attraction with James Van Der Beek.
Of course. Ian Somerhalder.
Yeah, James Van Der Beek plays Sean Bateman. Like that's what he's in that movie. That's his character, and they're meant to be, those characters in the books are brothers, and even that character Sean Bateman is in the book American Psycho. But he wrote another book called The Rules of Attraction that focused on that brother and not Patrick.
And that's a Roger Avery film.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
This movie actually has some incredibly odd and wild behind the scenes drama going into it. We kind of mentioned the book banning and how like that was such a controversial story to begin with, but
even Bret Easton said it was too violent to become a movie.
yeah. And if you watch this movie, like there's a lot of horrible shit that happens, but a lot of the violence is sort of alluded to, except in like one or two very specific scenes.
Yeah. Mary Harron was very pissed off about this. She was like, it's mostly the sex that people have issues with, which is bizarre in our culture, but it's not that violent of a movie. It's just a disturbing kind of violence. She's like, I love John Wick, but John Wick is 100 times more violent than this movie, but it'll never be seen that way because of the way our culture is.
Yeah. Like I don't think you actually ever, you only see Patrick Bateman stab a person once and it's not bloody. It's the vagrant guy.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's maybe...
the chainsaw scene a little bit, went down the stairs.
Yeah, but he doesn't actually ever... You don't see him hit her with the chainsaw.
It's just sticking out when it cuts to it.
Yeah, and they're running around. Like there's no actual like penetration of the chainsaw on them that you see. So you're right. Like John Wick's way gorier and violent in that aspect. But this, to your point, is like more disturbing to look at in a weird way.
Yeah.
But there's also like if you look at like so in the early 90s, they tried to make this movie. Paul Verhoeven was going to direct it.
Oh God.
And Paul Verhoeven had this whole like idea, and he eventually, I think Brad Pitt was going to star in his version of the movie. That kind of got dropped. Mary Harron came on board with Christian Bale, but the studio was like, hey, we want Leonardo DiCaprio to play Patrick Bateman. And Mary Harron's like, if you do that, I quit. And they're like, well, we're doing that. So then Oliver Stone was going to direct this movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. But at the time, this is like shortly after Titanic came out. And I don't have her name in front of me, but there's this woman. She was a pretty prominent feminist activist. She like sat down with Leonardo DiCaprio and says, hey, you made Titanic. You have this really big following with 13-year-old girls. What's it going to look like when you do this movie? Because she was a big like... she hated the book, so she didn't want this movie made. So she's like, what's that going to show all your newfound fans? And so Leo backed out. When Leo backed out, Oliver Stone backed out, and then they went back to Mary Harron, who's like, okay, we're hiring everyone I had hired before. We're making our movie.
Yeah.
And then the drama continued because this movie is so much focused on, clothing and, what are you wearing? All that superficial stuff. And so a lot of these like name brand things that are name dropped, they couldn't get a lot of the big names because these like Calvin Klein and all those people didn't want anything to do with this movie because it's
it's like reversed brand deals,
Yeah, he only refers to his watch as a watch because they couldn't get Rolex to allow them to use
Don't touch my watch.
Don't touch my watch.
Jean-Paul Gaultier is name dropped. Valentino suits are name dropped.
The Jean-Paul Gaultier thing is funny because they initially wanted Comme des Garçons. That's the bag they wanted, but they're like, you can't have our bag use our bags for body bags. And Jean-Paul Gaultier was like, you can use ours.
Yeah. It should be great for bodies.
Oh man. But yeah, it's so wild. And a really funny sort of like coincidental thing too is, a big part of the success of this movie is Christian Bale and how good he is in the role.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Like, he's
absolutely
incredible. He said according to Christian Bale, I think this was a interview on David Letterman. He was saying that, it was Mary Harron who was telling this tale about Christian Bale's inspiration for how he plays Patrick Bateman. And he was saying he was watching Late Night with David Letterman and he was watching an interview with Tom Cruise and noticed this, quote, very intense friendliness with nothing behind the eyes. And so he's basically like, I'm just going to be Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is in the book, Patrick Bateman makes it a point to say he lives in the same building as Tom Cruise. And it's just kind of like, whoa, this is how all these things are intersecting. Oh, and last but not least, that woman that talked to Leonardo DiCaprio and convinced him not to do the movie married Christian Bale's dad the same year this movie came out. That's Christian Bale's stepmom now.
Wild. So she was a mole to get him his role back. It was all a giant ruse.
Yeah, she's doing a solid for a
Give
new
that
stepson.
movie back to my boy.
My boy.
He deserves it. He's been working out all year.
Super Welsh.
That's right. He's super Welsh. So the movie opens with a delectable fancy feast with a pleasant symphonic backing. They're going all over these gourmet dishes.
Swordfish meatloaf with onion marmalade.
Yeah, we go through all the different waiters.
Rare roasted partridge, great with raspberry coulis.
I zoned out for a weird second during that scene and was just thinking about if I was like a background actor and I got a speaking part, I'm a waiter in American Psycho, and I'm practicing this line where I'm giving these daily specials. I don't know why I was thinking about that at the time. And then
how would you deliver the line squid ravioli in a lemongrass broth?
He delivered it perfectly. I could do it no better than that guy.
But how would you do it?
We've got squid ravioli with a lemongrass broth.
My God. 15-minute ovation at Cannes.
That's it. At least. And it's him and his coworkers and colleagues.
The boys.
The boys. It's a chicks restaurant.
Yeah, why aren't they at Dorsey's?
They're shit-talking Paul Allen. Even most of them are actually quite fond of Paul Allen. They're jealous.
They want to be Paul Allen.
He's got that account. That's incredible.
Yeah, and we should mention that Patrick Bateman's boys, played by, we got Patrick Bateman,
Justin
played
Theroux.
by Christian Bale. We've got Bryce, played by Justin Theroux. We got McDermott, played by Josh Lucas. And then there's Van Patten, who's played by Bill Sage, who I'm not super familiar with.
And Lewis. Can't forget Lewis.
Oh, and Lewis, yeah, the director of Captain Fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, Matt Ross is the director of Captain Fantastic.
Wow, I just channeled Owen Wilson there.
I love the introduction of these guys because you get to learn immediately that they all suck, right?
Yeah.
But Bateman in this first scene comes off as the quote unquote best of them because McDermott's like super anti-Semitic. And Bateman's
hey,
like,
whoa, cool it on the anti-Semitism.
Cool it with the anti-Semitism, pal. And then Van Patten just like springs out of nowhere. They don't have a good bathroom to do coke in.
But it's so funny because there's at least 3 scenes in this movie where Patrick Bateman is actually like falsely passionate about the most like surface level social justice that he can think of, like the buzzwords.
Fake allyship.
Exactly. And I love that probably Brett, but at least for sure Mary and Guinevere instilled that in this character. Like, this is who is among us, and they're not wearing rebel flag T-shirts and, you know what I mean, like in MAGA hats necessarily. They're sometimes just
wearing
chilling.
Armani suits.
Yeah, and then talking about how we need to donate more money to underprivileged children and this, and and that's where the predators are. And it's like, wild. But the next scene, they're at this like nightclub. The bartender tells him he can't use his like
his coupons,
his
or
like little
like drink stubs,
drink tickets anymore.
Yeah,
and when she turns around, the music's so loud, it's very shocking because you don't know at first time watching that she can't hear him. So he just says, "You fucking ugly bitch! I'll stab you to death
and play with your blood."
And play with the blood. That's right.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to her, and you realize she can't hear. But for a second, you're like, Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still shocking anyway. But it's a very, very neat scene.
And his delivery is so cold too, because he's whenever he's with his friends, he's doing this sort of faux like, I like Paul Allen. Like, it's like how newscasters talk. That fake optimistic voice is how he kind of
little dance he does with Huey Lewis.
I can't wait to get to that scene. So when he like turns that off and just goes like, "You fucking bitch!" Like it feels like a punch in the face every time he like switches roles, and it's like, oh, this guy's sinister. I don't like him.
Yeah, absolutely. The next scene, we get these establishing shots of his like pristine modern apartment, and this wonderful voiceover of his complex self-care skin cleaning routine mixed with his workout regimen.
I can do over 1,000 crunches now.
But then it gets like existentially dark by the end. It was like, there's no real me, no identity. This is all a mask,
And he does he has like some facial mask
like a face
that he's
peel.
peeling off, and it just looks so sinister. This guy staring dead-eyed into the mirror, pulling a face mask off.
Yeah.
Ugh.
At the office, Chloe Savini is his assistant. She plays Jean, legendary actor.
All set up by the meme of Patrick Bateman walking with his headphones on. That's a big
true.
TikTok meme, but he's listened. I forgot that he was listening to Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves. So this guy,
I'm walking on sunshine. Whoa. And she's like, "You look nice today." And he says, don't wear that outfit again. You're prettier than that, you know? And so thick with misogyny. I love, one of my favorite things my first watch, I really think I've only seen it once. One of my favorite things that I love about Patrick Bateman in this movie that makes him the biggest piece of shit, aside from the murder and all of that stuff, is that he's a high-level, super rich CEO who literally does nothing.
He does nothing.
He's just doodling, jacking off, reading porn, watching Jeopardy. Every time you cut to him in his office, he's doing fucking nothing.
And he's always telling Gene, like, tell him I'm not here.
Yeah, they do nothing.
All he does, well, literally, like, none of these people do anything. They never show any of the other. They're all vice presidents too.
Yeah, they just go to
like
lunch.
whatever that means. They all have these phony titles where they don't do dick. They make a ton of money somehow. And they're just complete pricks to everybody.
Like there's this, when Willem Dafoe, the detective, comes in, he's like, I'm sure you're very busy. And he has to like hide his porno mag and Walkman super fast. Anyway.
I love it.
But yeah, he's super mean to her. She just eats it. He turns on Jeopardy. And then it cuts to him in the car with my supposed fiance.
I'm trying to listen to the new Robert Palmer tape, but Evelyn is buzzing in my ear. He's listening to Simply Irresistible. Simply Irresistible.
It's fire.
Yeah, Evelyn, by the way, played by
Reese
the
Witherspoon.
wonderful Reese Witherspoon.
This wasn't in her book club, this book, I don't think.
Probably not.
I do love Wild. So he's trying to listen to Robert Palmer. She's buzzing in his ear. And she's like talking about getting married. And he's like, I told you I can't take the time off work. and they're both having affairs with their friends, both of them. He's fucking Courtney, and he's convinced she's fucking Bryce, right?
Yeah. He thinks he's having an affair with Bryce.
So he really doesn't care.
And I do like this little window into Patrick Bateman's mind is when he and Evelyn get out of the car. They go into this restaurant called Espace. Is that what it's called?
Yes, a spot J
or something. And he has this line. He's like, I'm literally on the verge of tears because I'm worried we won't have a decent table. Yeah. Luckily, I am proven wrong.
Yeah.
Like he's so worked up about like status and what they're going to look like if they sit at a bad table. And then there's this one funny little line where he sits down and Bryce's like, here, the menu's in Braille. And he just like stares at it for a second, confused.
Because it is steel and has like embossed lettering or whatever engraved.
Yeah.
But yeah, he meets those two like goth friends of Evelyn's, and they talk about social justice issues. I noticed the subtle correction of how Bryce pronounced Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka,
yeah,
because Bryce says Sri Lanka
twice, and then he's like, Sri Lanka is not what's important. And he goes on this tirade of all these like...
Gotta end apartheid, world hunger, the arms race, the homeless, racial discrimination, equal rights for women, encourage traditional moral family values, promote a general social concern and less materialism. Yeah. Like he goes through all that shit as if he cares about any of it. And then everyone kind of basically stops and Louis is like, oh my God, Patrick, that was beautiful.
Yeah. Louis wants to fuck.
Louis does want to fuck him.
Which is one of the other funniest parts.
It's such he's such a fake ally and just trying to look like this. He's all about looking the part of a smart intellectual person who actually cares about issues.
He reminds me of the guy from Good Will Hunting with the ponytail. That tries to embarrass Ben Affleck in the bar. You know what I'm talking about?
I've never seen Good Will Hunting. Why'd you just do the Invasion of Body Snatchers noise at me?
There's a lot of landmark cinema I have not seen. But Good Will Hunting, this is the film brilliant thing I'll ever say. Okay. Unabashedly, unironically, Good Will Hunting is fucking fantastic.
It looks fantastic. I've just never seen it.
One of the best Robin Williams performances of many that in existence. Mm-hmm. We're talking Oscar level Robin Williams, my friend. Oh, Captain, my captain on full display.
Oh, I love that scene.
It's a great movie. I would love to watch that with you.
Dead Poet Society?
Good Will Hunting. Wow.
I do want to see it. It's just one of those movies I just haven't gotten to.
I've never seen 2001: A Space Odyssey. I get it. Well, it's not something I like to admit in public.
It's okay.
Luckily, this is just me and you here.
Oh.
And 10,000 or 20,000 people.
Yeah.
That will keep it to themselves.
Yeah. Don't narc on us, guys. We have to maintain our street cred. Me not seeing Good Will Hunting isn't important. What we need to focus on is apartheid.
That's true.
And world hunger, the arms race.
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka.
After this, he walks up to, he goes to the ATM to take out money and then walks up to a woman at a crosswalk. It's kind of foreboding and menacing the way that he's staring at her. And I think we're led to believe that he killed her afterward.
Yeah, I think this is the woman whose head is in his freezer later on in the movie.
Yeah, I don't recognize any of the bodies
she has
later.
the same haircut.
But there's the blood on his sheets scene is right after this, right?
Yeah.
So I thought he killed her.
I did notice a really subtle, I don't know if it's subtle, but it was a nice touch of making the scene even creepier, was that she's significantly ahead of him and he like walks quicker
Really fast,
so he can catch up to her. They stop at the light. He says hello. And as they start walking, she's trying to walk slower so he'll pass her. But he maintains her speed, so he's like side by side with her, and it is like very foreboding. Like, ugh,
Yeah.
like
And
that.
he stares at her for like 30 seconds before she looks at him and he goes, hello.
Hello, would you like to know what I do?
No.
I make a lot of money.
The next day, he's at the dry cleaners screaming at these people who can't speak English. You can't bleach a Cerruti, which I guess is a nice kind of sheets. I don't know.
And and this is another example where he like it just is he's admitting to what he's doing out loud because he's like, if you don't shut your mouth, I'm gonna kill you, like straight to her face.
And
But
she's like, oh.
yeah.
Well, she kind of understands that part, I think.
Yeah.
At that point, Victoria walks in, who I think is an ex-girlfriend of his or something, and who's enamored with him.
So I looked her up because she doesn't appear in the movie anymore after this.
Yeah.
So I tried to figure out like who that is, and I guess in the book she's just a woman who lives in the same building as he, and who like has a crush on him, and he just is kind of vaguely aware of who she is, but doesn't really know her. That's why when she's like, "You want to go out?" He's like, "I don't know," because in the book she's described as being a little bit more heavy set, and so he's like obviously a superficial dude, and he's like, "I don't want to talk to you. You're a heavy set person."
Yeah.
But yeah, this is just a woman that he vaguely knows, I guess.
I love it's so funny. And again, this is satirically funny. So when I say I love or that was so funny, it's because it's ridiculous, right? But when she says, I want to go out for dinner, and he's like, I can't, I work every night. And she's like, what about on Saturdays? And he takes the time to, instead of saying no, he goes, ooh, next Saturday? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, I got a matinee.
I'm at Les Mis. Yeah.
Like he just leads her down that path for no reason
Just be an
before
asshole.
shutting her down again.
But she sees the bloody sheets because he's like, will you talk to these people for me to see what they can do? And she's like, what kind of stain is that? It's cranberry juice.
Cran apple.
It's cran apple.
Okay. Doesn't look like that at all.
It looks like blood.
In the next scene, he's talking to Courtney, who's Lewis's fiance, his side piece. He's got porn on in the background, which, if you notice, is actually a VHS copy of Inside Lydia's Ass.
Oh, I did not write that down.
That's right.
I just love this. This is I love how they kind of just keep introducing these subtle things. Like, this guy's not well.
Yeah. You don't just keep porn on casually in the background?
Yeah, especially not when I'm talking to someone on the phone and you can just hear it at full blast in the background.
Oh, yeah. I'm Lydia.
Oh, are you watching Inside Lydia's Ass? It's
I love that movie.
one of my favorites.
That and Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
So he tries to make her, she doesn't want to come out because she's famously on a lot of psych meds, Xanax, lithium, she's bipolar, things like that. And he coaxes her out by saying he can get him a table at Dorsia, which is a very highly sought after restaurant in town. So he calls Dorsia to make a res, and they laugh him off the phone.
You can't get a reservation this late, you fool.
Loser. Or really at all. Like, to get a table at Dorsia at all.
Yeah.
So Courtney comes out all zannied out. She's in the cab, half passed out, and they go to a place called Barcadia. She's like, is this Darcia? And he's like, yes.
Yes, it is. Is that Donald Trump's car?
Yeah. Trump is mentioned, I think, twice in this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's Ivana and then this one.
Yeah.
Is that Donald Trump's car?
Yeah. Implying, I would say, this is I love the thing, like the Donald Trump comparisons, because that was always a person who, like, when you think of the, like, cokehead, crooked business person in the
New York,
80s.
yeah.
In New York, it's Donald Trump that you think of every
Yeah.
time. So it makes sense that they would reference him because this is in the before times.
Yes. It plays differently now.
Yeah. I mean, I always think of there's a fun John Mulaney bit from like years ago. I think it was his first comedy album where he's like Donald Trump is is a poor person's idea of what a rich man is, and he has this bit where like these people are like, man, when my number comes in, I'm gonna build tall buildings with my name on them. And I'm going to host a TV show where I fire people with my kids.
Yeah, exactly. Just flexing. He orders dinner for her, and she's like, thank you. You're going to have. Because New York Times called it a delectable little dish.
Yeah, he's got all these little reviews memorized because he always needs to know what's in, what's hip, what sounds good, what looks good. He just has it all like in the can up there.
Sound bites, baby.
Courtney, you should take more lithium or a Diet Coke. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It can be tough out there as we try to navigate the many twists and turns that life throws our way. Not every problem we face has an obvious or easy solution, but talking through these issues can always bring major benefits. So whether you're dealing with a career change, relationship help, or just getting used to your new normal, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. I myself have benefited from therapy. I have benefited from BetterHelp. I was struggling to find myself and figure out who I was post-divorce. BetterHelp matched me with an amazing therapist who taught me all about codependency, what it was, and ways I can combat it and realize my whole true self. So if it sounds like therapy is the right move for you, then give BetterHelp a try. It's online, convenient, flexible, and can work with your schedule. Filling out a brief questionnaire is all it takes to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time. To start your own therapy journey, visit betterhelp.com/streamingthings today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/streamingthings. It's the month of September, and with a new month comes a new opportunity for us to be thankful for all of the stream fiends who help us at Streaming Things keep the lights on and make this show what it is. So let's give a super patron shout out to some of our most ardent supporters on patreon.com/streamingthings. Thank you so much to Becky the Farmer, Kaylee Sampson, Stanton Valentino, Sunshine, Huckleberry Cauliflower, Optimus, Mike from New Hampshire, Brett X, Emily Scarano, Lil Tickler, Svento7, Jay Scramo, AK Ashley Ray, Adam Busby, Wendy O'Laughlin, Jason Hawkins, Butthorn, Conrad, David Malfara, Rabbit Dog in a Barbie Car, Jose Ruben Cruz Rodriguez, Charlie Friday, Alexis Adler, Emmy, Joe Velez, Valerie, John Collins, Amber McVeigh, Amanda King, Trisha Bueller, Sun Loving Mortal, Suzanne Rode, Jadinklage Morgoon, Jen Robinson, Kate, Kalisha Reeves, Aaron Armstrong, Kevin Strother, Jeanette Murphy, Ashley Powers, Stephen V, Casey McCain, and Enza. And with that, back to the show.
In the next scene, Lewis, they're all together again, like having brunch, and Lewis is glazing Patrick. Like, what a good suit. Oh my God.
Thanks for taking care of Courtney last night.
Yeah, that was so nice of you to take her to Dorsia. How did you get a table? Lewis, don't touch me. And then Paul Allen comes up, played by Jared Leto, and mistakes him for Halberstram. Another guy that I don't think ever meet.
Marcus Halberstram?
I think so.
I think you see him in this scene maybe, because he's talking about he's mistaken me for Halberstram, and they focus on a different dude, so I assume that's who he looks like. He's like, we even get our hair done at the same place, although my hair is slightly better.
Yeah. And like, people mistake him for other people throughout the movie, and he does for others as well. But like, and he never corrects them. He doesn't bother. It doesn't matter. I'm not an actual person.
Right.
I'm just a suit and a haircut. And so in this scene, Alan's like, "Oh, are you still with Cecilia?" And he's with Evelyn. I assume Halberstram's with Cecilia. And he's like, "Oh, Cecilia's great."
Oh, you know Cecilia.
It doesn't fucking matter.
She be Sicilian.
Oh.
Wow.
Of Sicily?
Yeah, wow.
I saw a fake news article earlier that it was like Italy is suing Hollywood for the unfair representation from mafia movies. Talking about Italians. Mm-hmm. That was funny.
The whole nation of Italy?
Yeah. It said source, Italy. It's one of those like fake news accounts that's just a news account's name, but with one letter changed. So it looks, people think it's real a lot of the time.
That's funny.
I like it.
I like that.
I think that's funny. And then we get the iconic business card scene where they all compare fonts and a tasteful thickness.
The tasteful thickness of it.
And Paul Allen's business card is so fucking good. It drives him nuts. He starts sweating. He He can't breathe.
Oh my God. That's subtle off-white coloring.
Oh my God.
It even has a watermark. I can gush about the scene all day long. I actually, in college, my senior year, there was a project where we had to take a scene from a movie and recreate it shot for shot.
You did this one. I remember you telling me the story. What a good one to pick.
Yeah, and the point of the exercise was not to get like actors who look like it and necessarily like. The point was to understand the framing that's going on, like what lenses you use to achieve what look, how do you like block people. That was the purpose of it. And this exercise actually taught me so much because film, really, the reality of a movie only exists between 4 lines. You know, you're in a square. So whatever happens outside of those lines does not matter. So when you watch this movie, there is no, like, the way the scene plays out, Bateman is sitting directly across from Bryce in the chair. But there was one specific shot where you see over the shoulder of Bateman, you can see Bryce, McDermott, and Van Patten all in the same shot. And the way it's framed, when we were actually filming this for this college project, I realized there's no way you can film this with them actually sitting across from each other. So we moved Bryce and the people who were playing Bryce, Van Patten, and McDermott like down 2 seats. So they're actually like off frame from each other, and that's how they got that look. And I was like, wow, that's true. Like whatever's in the frame is reality, and you can play with stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when we shot our Bateman, and I played Lewis in the scene, we've shot in a completely side of the room that had a window because there's a window behind him. And I don't know, I just really love this scene. It's very funny. I love the whole, like, all their business cards look the fucking same.
Yes.
They're white with very similar font. There's maybe subtle differences to it, but they're all trying to big dick each other over these cards. And something that makes...
It's called Oxbone.
Oxbone. They're all vice presidents. And I don't know if you picked up on this joke, but in the corner... they all work in mergers and acquisitions. Acquisitions is spelled wrong on all of their cards.
Is it really?
Yeah. So it's just, they're all fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Competing over like who has the best square white card. And yeah, and then the whoosh sound, because every time they reveal their card, there's like a noise. Yeah. Supposedly that is someone drawing a sword slowed down.
Oh, nice.
So it's yeah. Neat. Sorry, I love this scene so much. I've done a lot of research on it in the past.
It's fucking great. And it got memed recently where people would show like poorly Photoshop like Horizon Zero Dawn on one card, and then it would be like God of War on the other. You know what I mean? And so they do like game of the year joke videos and stuff. And
oh my god,
the
tasteful thickness.
Yeah.
What is that? That's bone. Raised lettering. Pale nimbus, white.
So then in the next scene, he's offering things to a homeless man in the alley, and it looked like he's just teasing him with money, and he fucks with him for a long time. And like, why don't you
so mean?
Why don't you get a job?
Hey, Al, why don't you get a job? You smell like shit, Al.
Yeah.
We don't have anything in common.
Oh, man, I'm so cold. And then he opens his briefcase, pulls out a knife, stabs him to death, and then stomps his dog to death.
Yeah, it's fucking awful.
Not cool.
He gives this guy just a glimmer of hope that he's going to help him out, and then kills him and his dog.
Which is what the man be doing, you know?
Yeah.
They pretend they want to help, and then they cut you.
Yep.
And then, we get more... He's kind of almost worried about himself a little bit.
Yeah,
he's not quite capable of that. My nightly bloodlust has overflowed into my days. Mm-hmm. My mask of sanity is slipping.
Yeah, but there's a lot of monologuing. I don't know if people have picked up on the fact that like he's monologuing a lot of the movie, like narrating, because he's an unreliable narrator too.
Yeah, and we cut a few months down the line. Now it's a Christmas party. Evelyn, his fiance, has a pet piglet. I forget what she named it.
Potbelly pig.
My God, what is that?
What is that? And he's just so disgusted by it. Because again, he's worried he's going to look bad standing next to it. Like, what are people going to think if you're holding that thing? Like, he doesn't say that, but...
She's like, you're late. No, I wasn't. I've been here for ages. You just didn't see me. Mm-hmm. There's no need for that. But it bothers him to be seen as someone who's late.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true or not that he was there or not. I just feel like...
But it also leads into the thought that all these people don't really give a shit about each other. Like, she didn't even notice he was there.
Her own fiance.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then...
Paul Allen's there.
Yeah. And then I think it's Bateman that invites him to a restaurant, correct?
Yeah, we should get lunch.
Yeah. So Alan is upset the next time they're together at this restaurant that the restaurant is empty. Like, this isn't a happening place to be. And so Bateman is up. I think there's two reasons for that. He wanted it to be empty, so there was less witnesses that he was with him.
Yes.
But also, he's incapable of getting seats at like super cool places.
Yeah, Paul Allen can get a table
Easy.
at Dorsey at no problem.
Easy.
Because he's got the Fletcher account.
Well, yeah, that's right. So he tries to act like this restaurant is so cool. Isn't that Ivana Trump over there? And that actually slows Alan down a beat because he's such a douche too. He's like, wait, whoa.
Alan's so mad that they're there, and yeah, he says that about like, oh, Ivana, silly Patrick. I mean, Marcus, why would Ivana be here? But he put that little nugget in Alan's brain, so he kind of, like you said, he cools down. He starts being like, okay with it, but they're such dicks to the waiter.
Oh, he's like, do you want to hear today's specials? Not if you want to keep your stone or some shit. Like,
your spleen.
He says some like heinous shit to him. Yeah.
J and B straight and a Corona. I love that like big point.
Yeah.
And a Corona.
And then, he makes fun of Patrick Bateman because he says, I'm Mark Halberstram, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that Patrick Bateman. What a dork. Evelyn, great ass. Patrick's like, yeah.
Have another martini, Paul.
So then they're back at his apartment, at Patrick's apartment.
Oh, he also does the thing where I forget what Paul asks him, but he goes, I like to dissect girls. Did you know I'm utterly insane?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he just goes like, oh, you should get a tanning bed or something like that.
Where do you tan? Salon. I have one in my apartment. You should look into that. And Patrick's like, fuck, that is awesome.
And doesn't he get one later on? Isn't he in a tanning bed at some point?
I didn't notice that. He's in a tanning bed in the scene before this, but it's at a salon.
Oh, okay.
Because it's the lady's like, you have such nice skin.
You're right.
That scene had already transpired.
That's right.
So then you take it away. I know you love this scene. We go back to Patrick's apartment.
Yeah, we're back at Patrick's apartment. He has put newspapers down on the ground. All of his couches are covered, but Paul Allen is like very inebriated. He's very drunk. He's slumped over on the chair. And this is when Patrick starts to tell him how much he loves Huey Lewis in the News. And so he starts playing Hip to Be Square, and he just starts just talking at Paul Allen, not with him. He's just talking at him about, the importance of this song and how great it is. And the whole time he's doing this, Paul Allen's struggling to kind of keep up with the conversation, but Patrick goes into the bathroom, he puts on a raincoat, he pops some pills, he grabs an axe, and he like moonwalks out of the bathroom back into the room with the axe. And he's so happy. And I love this. I don't know if you took it this way, but I love this performance because it's super manic, it's super wild. But to me, it seems like Patrick Bateman is at his limit of keeping the veneer of this character that he puts out when he's out in public, and he's breaking, so it becomes more manic. Like, I'm barely holding in my rage. I'm barely holding in my rage.
Raincoat? Yes, it is.
Yes. Oh my God, that delivery. Is that yes, it is. Like he's so excited. And then finally he says like, about the album, Huey Lewis, it's not about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of trends. It's also about a personal statement about the band itself. Hey, Paul. And then he just hacks his fucking face off.
Yeah.
And he's really bloody. He takes off the raincoat and then just sits in the chair and just kind of allows the rush of everything he just did to happen and lights up a cigar.
Yeah. Gotta have that old cigar.
The whole time, Hip to Be Square is going on in the background.
Loves Huey Lewis in the News.
Do you like that scene?
I do. I love it so much. Mostly the jaunt after he stashes the axe behind Paul and goes to like, while he's wearing the raincoat.
Oh yeah, that little
exposit more about Huey Lewis in the News. Yeah, that
little dance he
like
does.
flamboyant dance back to the axe is iconic.
Apparently
And the axe is really cool, like that stainless steel.
It's got that beautiful sheen on it.
Yeah.
Apparently that moonwalk he did was improvised. Like that wasn't something he was told to do.
He's just like, I feel like Tom Cruise would do it this way.
Can I jump on this couch?
Do you have a dog, man? What's with the newspaper? You like a fucking chow?
No, Paul.
You're going to die.
But yeah, when he starts chopping him up, he like starts screaming at him like, try to get a reservation at Dorsia now, you dumb bastard.
Yeah.
Like he's finally letting this rage that's been stewing in him just out. Yeah. And then it cuts to him dragging this bloody Gautier body bag out the front door. The
security guard's like, meh.
And he's like, same old, same old. And then Lewis is walking by with not Courtney, another person.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh my God, Patrick, Where did you get that overnight bag?
Jean-Paul Gaultier. And then he goes to Paul's apartment. He took the keys out of his pocket, and he's there ostensibly to make it look like he left, right? But also,
Took a trip.
he's so jealous. It's like the sheer panic when I realize it overlooks the park and is obviously more expensive than mine.
Yeah. He's just, the sheer panic sets in. Oh my God. But he re-records the voicemail and it doesn't sound anything like Paul Allen. Hi,
I'm
I've
going to
gone to
London."
London. But then we get some lady in red as he's just, meditating in his office, not working.
Lady in red. He's interrupted by Gene saying that there's a Detective Donald Kimball here. He's telling him I'm out to lunch. It's 10:30. I'm pretty sure he knows you're here. Well, let him in. And then he has this moronic conversation trying to instruct somebody how to tip. Don't tip the owner.
So funny. Always tip the stylist 15%. No, Mark, don't tip the owner of the salon.
Sorry, just some big accounts. How can I help you? And then, so there's the porno mag and the tape on the desk. And
Willem Dafoe, by the way, did you mention that?
I did.
Yeah.
It's Willem Dafoe.
How wild.
We're having a weird conversation about Paul Allen. There's some homophobia starts to crack in his facade here.
He's all part of that Yale thing.
What Yale thing? Please do tell me more. I think he's a closeted homosexual who does a lot of cocaine. It's out of fucking nowhere. And Willem Dafoe's like, okay. All right. So he handles that very poorly.
Yeah, and Kimball kind of introduces the whole somebody actually says they saw Paul Allen in London, but they were actually they mistook him for Herbert Ainsworth. Yes. So they are establishing even more that no one really knows who each other is.
Right.
And there was one funny, I saw this interview where Mary Herron was saying she instructed Willem Dafoe to play. So there's three scenes where Detective Kimball shows up and talks to Patrick Bateman. And she said each of the three scenes, he's supposed to interact with him in three different styles. One scene, he's acting as if he's suspicious of him. One, if he has no clue of Bateman's guilt. And one, as if he's undecided on if he's guilty or not.
Okay.
And so with that lens, it's kind of interesting to see, I think this one might be the
undecided.
And then the next one's guilty, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe. I think the restaurant is where he's the most suspicious.
Well, he's acting so sus immediately. He should have been picked up and thrown in a police car immediately with how suspicious Bateman acts this whole time.
Thoroughly questioned. In the next scene, we see him working out again. This time, to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
And that jump scare from the actual 70s movie is pretty extreme. The scream was super loud. He goes to pick up a hooker in a limo and then orders a second one on the car phone.
Can't stress blonde enough.
I'm Paul Allen. Yeah. You're Christy, is what he tells the escort in the car. He makes her bathe. Clean your vagina. From behind.
That's very fine shard you're drinking.
Stand up, dry off, put on whatever robe you want. Not the Bichon. I don't know what that is.
I don't know. I thought that was a dog.
That's when the other woman shows up. I'm going to call you Sabrina. And then
You've arrived. How lovely.
He talks to him about Phil Collins this
Not
time.
Quite blonde, are you?
More of a dirty blonde. Sabrina's not having it. And he talks to him about Phil Collins while he orders them around. Get on your knees so Sabrina can see your asshole. And then he talks about Phil Collins some more. Don't just stare at it, eat it.
Yeah. He's so gross.
And then he has sex with them while looking at himself the entire time.
To Susudio.
Susudio. But this scene was cut. I watched the extended version. It's a lot more of the sex in the threesome era. But again, it's mostly just him flexing and stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious because most of the scenes is just him looking in the mirror, pointing at himself and flexing and smiling. What a fucking tool.
And Christy's pretty amazed by this. Wow, what a tool.
Yeah, Christy knows there's something up with this dude, but just due to the nature of her situation, she's okay to risk being around him, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, at the end, he hits him digs in him with chisels and hits him with a coat hanger, I'm guessing. Because it cuts after he grabs those two things. We're not quite finished yet. And then they leave bleeding, and you can kind of see two stripes on Sabrina.
And then later on, Chrissy says she might need some surgery after last time. What the fuck did he do to her?
Yeah.
But there's a couple of things. So Phil Collins mentioned, he when he first heard, because I guess his career is referenced in the book. Because in the book supposedly, again, I haven't read this. This is just secondhand information that I'm going off of. The book is written in a first-person point of view for the most part, where Patrick Bateman is telling the listener, like it's like a strain of thought type thing.
Yeah. Where
his day-to-day. But then like he'll have full chapters where he just talks to people about an album. So that's part of the reason why he always talks about albums. And Phil Collins said that the first time he heard that his song was referenced in this book, he was like, oh, I didn't read this book. I just thought, that's all we need. We need glorifying this type of crap. I'm not interested. But then went on to say, when the film came out, I thought it was funny.
Susudio does slap.
It really does. I mean, I'm just glad people have threesomes to it. Yeah. And then apparently Mary Harron and Christian Bale worked together to block the three-way scene. And Mary Harron said that Bale often made stick figures demonstrating the positions he thought would work.
This is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
That's how I typically like to do it.
If I were Jason Bateman or Patrick Bateman.
Yeah. God damn it.
Every time.
You would just be lecturing the two women on how they should not be hookers if you were Jason Bateman.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You guys, you gotta. That's my Jason Bateman impersonation.
That was pretty good, actually. George Michael.
How's that profitable for Frito-Lay? If Patrick Bateman was their neighbor in Game Night, how's that profitable for Frito-Lay?
Such a good movie.
Are you guys having a game night? That's an interesting crossover I'd like to see. I
just saw a Jason Bateman movie I'd never heard of before. This Is Where I Leave You. Have you seen that?
No.
It's got Tina Fey, Adam Driver.
Wow.
Jason Bateman, Corey Stoll.
Sounds like a stacked cast.
It's a stacked cast. Timothy Olyphant.
Wow, now I'm sold.
Yeah, it's an okay movie, but yeah,
That's the guy from Book of Boba Fett, right?
Timothy Olyphant. Yeah,
It's a joke.
I was about to say, of all the things, Timothy Olyphant. You're like Book of Boba Fett.
Book of Boba Fett. Fucking Star Wars drives me nuts. In the next scene, there's an extended discussion of misogyny with his friends. He drops an Ed Gein quote on him.
You know what Ed Gein, famous serial killer, said about women?
They're like, who's that? And he's like, serial killer. And they go, all right, hit me.
What does he have to add to this conversation about girls?
And in this extreme misogyny, Lewis has an exquisite business card to show. I got a new business card too, guys. It's got a little green tint to some of the font on there. Mm. And Patrick is just very upset about that.
Everyone looks like kicked puppies when they realize that Lewis, of all people, has a better card.
Lewis has such a fire card, right? So that he chases Lewis into the bathroom and goes to strangle him to death right then and there.
Puts on his gloves.
But Lewis thinks he wants to fuck. Patrick, why here? I've been wanting this for so long.
I've seen the way you look at me.
Patrick's homophobia is so deep that he feels the need to wash his gloves.
Yeah, in the sink.
Wash the gay off his gloves and run. I've got to return some videotapes, which is a joke I don't get, to be honest. He says that's like his
that's his get out of jail free card for any conversation. Yeah. I got to go return videotapes. He even says it
to the detective. I was probably returning videotapes. Yeah. Where were you that night? You know. It's so fucking funny to me, but I don't get it.
I used to say that to
I'm going to start saying that when I want to leave.
Oh, I used to do that at the movie theater. Like when I first saw this movie when I was in my like early 20s and I worked at the theater, like if someone was having a conversation with me I just wanted out of, I would just say, I've got to return some videotapes and walk away.
I'm going to start doing that, dude.
You should. It's
That's
really
how I'm
funny.
going to end the show from now on.
Especially now.
Yeah.
No one has videotapes now.
It's like, yeah.
Where are you going to return them to? Goodwill?
That's just how I'm going to end the show from now on. Instead of, that's all the time we've got for right now. I've got to go return some videotapes. My name is Kit. New shtick. Exactly. You get it. And we get another interview with Detective Willem Dafoe. And he says, again, I need you to remember where you were that night. Oh, I went to an early showing of Oh, Africa, Brave Africa. It was a laugh riot.
A laugh riot.
It does not sound like it's intended to be funny.
No.
And then he pulls out a Huey Lewis and the News CD out of his briefcase. And it looks like he's fucking with him because it's like, do you know that I was listening to that when I killed Paul? Mm-hmm. And that's how Patrick takes it. I think it's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
So Patrick's like, no.
I don't like music at all.
Yeah. Wait, you don't like music?
No.
No, I don't like it. So then we cut to him banging Courtney, which is again Lewis's fiance.
Missionary style.
Yeah, showing some character arc there. He's not in his right mind. He's got all his clothes on.
Well, this is an interesting. So Courtney obviously is very depressed.
Yes.
She's very upset.
If you don't call me before Easter, have a good one. Okay.
Yeah, he's being very dismissive. But there is this weird relationship between the two of them where he doesn't try to ever kill her or hurt her.
Yeah.
In the way he does
Or
Evelyn, true. But Evelyn, it seems more of a status thing and keeping up appearances, whereas every other woman he would he at least tries to hurt. He doesn't try to hurt Courtney. He almost, at one point he says she's perfect, like in the beginning of the movie. He seems like he likes her the most. But she is clearly, I don't know, I could be reading this wrong. I feel like she's suicidal, and that was the whole, like, if I don't see you before Easter, I hope it's a good one.
That's the vibe I got, yeah.
And she's like, because every time he tries to leave, she's like, Patrick, and he's like, what?
What?
Like, almost she's trying to connect with him because she actually, like, loves him and cares about him, which is weird with her situation and how, and in a strange way, she's one of the only people that he kind of connects with too. Because he even lingers like, what is it? Like, but he has no emotions and can't really understand that. So. He doesn't know how to react, so he doesn't leave.
Narcissistic, yeah.
It's a very interesting scene and two characters to have together.
At the next scene, they're back at a club again, and this is where we get that murders and executions bit where they're flirting with the ladies there, the models.
Mm-hmm. You keep it down. I'm trying to do drugs.
Yeah. Hey, fuck you, man.
Sorry, steroids.
It's really shitty coke. If we do enough of it, it'll work.
It's a sweetener.
Sorry, it was the steroids. I forgot about that. Yeah, and then one of the models is really into Patrick, and she's like, "You think I'm dumb, don't you?" And he's like, "No." She's like, "Actually, I don't even care." And then they go to his apartment. He kills her because in the next morning he's in his office with a piece of her hair.
Yeah,
and I think we see her body later on in the scene with Jean, or not Jean, but the Christy. Mm-hmm. So he's doing a crossword puzzle, and every word is either meat or bone. Is what he's filling in every answer with. And at this point, he asks Jean to dinner and says, "Anywhere you'd like to go, I'll take you." She says Dorsia, which is the wrong thing to say. So he pretends to book a table at Dorsia. She's like, you didn't even say the name. And he's like, "They know me.
They know me there.
But won't you meet at my apartment first around 7 for a drink?" So she meets him there. This is where we get the scene where he offers her sorbet. And there's a head in the freezer and says he can't have any because he's on a diet. And she's like, "You look great. You can always look thinner and better."
Mm-hmm. Maybe we shouldn't go to dinner so I don't ruin your willpower.
"Oh, that's okay. I don't have much self-control anyway." And
so, she thinks they're flirting.
Right. He's talking about killing her.
But the whole time he's walking around like looking at, should I kill her with this knife? How about this nail gun? How about this duct tape?
He looks at the butcher knives and stuff as well. He grabs the duct tape and a nail gun. He's about to shoot her in the back of the head. I think it's telling, too, in that moment, she said, "Have you ever wanted to make someone else happy?" And he's like, "What?" And then he's about to kill her. And he never answers it because then Evelyn calls.
Yeah.
No is the answer to that. That's never occurred to him ever, you know? And so, Jean, run.
Yeah, I think this is another interesting scene where I don't know exactly what they're saying about him because he does kind of, he's almost putting her through a job interview and the job is him killing her because he's asking her like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Like all that stuff. And she, again, of all these characters, Jean is the one that isn't succumbed to the superficial lifestyle.
Yes.
And he's about to kill her and she has that question like, "Have you ever wanted to make someone happy?" And right then is when Evelyn calls, and that's the superficial relationship he's in, and he like is deflated almost, like, "Oh wait, like I hate these people, I hate me, I hate my life. This person seems better than that." And then he lets her go, and says like and again it's a double entendre stuff because he says like, "I'm afraid I can't control myself if you stay.
Yeah,
I might hurt you." And she's like, "I don't want to get hurt." Like she's again thinking of the relationship.
Yeah.
Because he's seeing Evelyn, broken heart stuff, but he's literally talking like, "I might fucking kill you."
She's missing the red flags where he was telling her about Ted Bundy's first dog and stuff earlier on. Who's Ted Bundy?
He had a dog named Lassie. Can you believe it?
There's something I never noticed before in this scene. It's so tiny, but when Evelyn's on the voicemail, she calls him honey, and he winces. And after he winces, like you got to be watching his face and listening to her talk because Jean's in the shot too, but this tiny like, And then afterwards, she's sorry. I know you hate that. And it's just like this thing. He doesn't like any kind of intimacy whatsoever. Like it's just completely pointless to him. It's painful, you know? I just thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
And the next scene is when he has, because she reminds him, by the way, you have lunch with the detective tomorrow, which he had forgotten. And this is where they meet
slipped my mind.
at the restaurant. He finally gets his alibi out, and he's like, actually, because he was trying to blame Halberstram, I think, on killing Paul Allen, which was the entire point. He's like, Halberstram was at this club the whole night with all your friends and you.
And you. Oh, was it that night?
Oh.
Whoa, slipped my mind.
And so the detective B-plot thing is suddenly not even an issue anymore.
Willem Dafoe thinks that Paul Allen just went nuts and went to London to get away from it all.
Yeah. Which I like the idea that the director told him to act at each scene differently because you're kind of all over the place whether or not, for a minute you think the detective's hot on his trail. And in a normal movie, that's what
he would be.
That's what the conflict would be, is that he is, he does suspect him. But no,
not at all.
Just wants to eat lunch.
Well, there's a deleted scene where he runs into Kimball at a nightclub. So it like implies that Kimball's also kind of in this realm as well.
Yeah.
Of like partying by night and doing coke and shit.
Yeah.
So
what was the 80s in New York?
Right. Hell yeah, buddy.
Everybody was, baby.
Studio 54, let's go.
And after this, he goes to pick up Christy, the prostitute, again. He lures her to the car with money, and she's like, I had to have surgery. I had to go to the emergency room after last time.
Ugh, what did you do to her?
I have no idea. So she's tempted back into the car. He gives her a check, and then she runs intelligently, and then he lures her with even more money back into the limo and calls up a friend of his who's apparently the writer of the movie.
Guinevere?
I didn't know that, yeah. And then they get back, and the Guinevere character, I forget her name.
Elizabeth, that's
right. She's fascinating. She's got a little bit of a history with him. She's not a prostitute. She's like an old fling of his.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, I don't have sex with women. And then I think he's drugging her because she keeps saying that the wine tastes interesting.
Yeah, he's definitely
And he keeps telling
her.
Christy, drink up, drink more.
But Christy's not.
No.
Yeah, Christy isn't, because she's kind of in on the scheme now.
Yeah.
She doesn't trust this guy.
Yeah, you roofie people and kill them or do weird shit to them. And I just want the money.
She's like, this wasn't your apartment.
So they wait till they start fucking, and then Christy tries to sneak out. But right as she's about to sneak out of the room, he's actively killing Elizabeth. I think he's like biting her.
I think so. I think he's
because his mouth's all bloody when he pulls up.
Yeah.
And there ends up being this nude chase around the apartment, even throughout the apartment building. And she finds all the bodies hidden throughout the apartment, which should have been smelly. Some of them are in the freezer and stuff, but some of them are just laying there, cut open and stuff in certain rooms.
Yeah.
But, they haven't been there that long.
I mean, this could be evidence of the people who ascribe to the theory that this is all a dream and he didn't actually kill anybody.
But that would make it such a bad movie.
I agree. Yeah.
They teach you that in like middle school. Don't do It's All a Dream. That's terrible.
Yeah.
And I think Mary has said it's not, is what I was reading about today.
Well, we'll get to it when we get there. Yeah.
Yeah, so she runs. She almost gets away. Long story short, he ends up chasing her with a chainsaw, inspired by the movie he was watching earlier, I'm sure. And it's a really cool scene where he like tries to gauge the distance and like.
Yeah, so she's running down like a spiral staircase of some sort, and he isn't chasing her, but he's kind of like following her with the chainsaw and then drops it so that when she gets to the bottom of the stairs, it just hits her.
Yeah.
And he, bullseye, gets her.
Kills her.
And again, like you don't see it hit her, but you just see this like bloodied, naked Christian Bale just scream in delight that he got her, like, and it's horrifying.
No one in the apartment building, like she knocked on everybody's doors. Nobody comes out. Nobody seems to notice. He's able to clean that, supposedly. He's able to clean that mess up in the stairwell and go on about his day.
Yeah. Yep. And then we cut to him. He's drawing Christie's death on the table like he's at a La Rosa's with crayons.
Yeah, with Evelyn, breaking up with her.
Yeah.
For a while, she kind of ignores him. Like, oh, you're silly. I know I'm
your friends are
laying
my
it on
friends.
too thick with it. Yeah. I've thought about that, how my friends are your friends and you can have them. Oh, you're serious?
you're not terribly important to me. And then she starts crying. Everyone's looking at them. Now he's upset now because she's making a quote unquote scene. And so he bails by saying, I've got to return some videotapes.
I'm leaving. I'm going to return some videotapes. Then what happens next?
This is the ATM.
Oh, okay.
He goes to the ATM at night.
The ATM tells him to stuff the cat in it.
Feed me a stray cat. I could give Christian Bale all of the Oscars for this one shot where the ATM says, feed me a stray cat, and confused. Like, he looks so confused. He picks up the kitten, looks at the ATM machine, and then pulls out a gun and holds the gun to the kitten's head as if to force it into the ATM.
Get in there.
And, okay, this is the most wild scene because
the whole sequence is bad shit.
He starts to feed this cat into an ATM. An older woman pops up. Is like, what are you doing? And again, confused as all hell, looks at her like, huh? And then shoots her like, go away. And it starts this whole cops chase. He runs around. He shoots a receptionist guard into like a building and then circles back through the spiral door to like shoot the janitor.
He
goes around and comes back and shoots him.
Imagine not thinking this was funny.
This is so fucking funny. And then he goes into another building, but actually pretends he's going to shoot this guard, but like dramatically pulls out his pen so he signs in.
And don't forget he killed the two cops too.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. The cops are chasing him and he has a shootout with the cops. He shoots a couple of them and then he like blows up both of the cars by shooting at it. And he looks at his gun again, confused.
This thing's amazing.
But he gets into his, and that was another thing. The first guard,
calls him Mr. Smith.
Calls him Mr. Smith. Again, no one knows who anyone is in this place. Yes. Yeah. But he goes into his office.
Burning the midnight oil, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, bam. But he makes it into his office, doesn't kill that guard, and he calls his lawyer, Harold Carnes, and basically confesses to everything. And this is another really, really great performance, I think, because it's all one take where he's confessing, like, I killed some escort girls, 5 or 10 homeless people.
Maybe 40 people.
Bethany, some man with a dog, killed a girl with a chainsaw. I killed Paul Allen with an axe, and I killed a lot of people.
I ate some of their brains.
Oh, yeah. So he's basically describes everything he does in the book, but we don't necessarily see in the movie.
Yeah.
Because he mentions killing his ex-girlfriend, Bethany, who we never see. And so he's like, I don't think I'm going to get away with it this time, but I may see you at Harry's bar, so keep your eyes open.
It's really funny. He's going to go hang out the next day. And he does, in fact, see him at Harry's bar.
Yeah.
That's the next scene, right?
Well, the next scene is he goes back to Paul Allen's place to try to clean up all the dead bodies because he hasn't been caught yet. So he thinks, I better go to Paul Allen's, get rid of all the dead bodies and everything. But when he walks into Paul Allen's place, all the bodies are gone, all the furniture's gone, the walls have been painted in white. There's a realtor there giving a couple a tour of the building. And she's like, are you my 2 o'clock? And he goes, and Patrick Bateman's so confused. He has no idea what's happening. He thinks he's going crazy. Doesn't Paul Allen live here? And she's like, no. Why are you here? Like, did you see that ad in the Times? And he goes, yeah. There wasn't an ad in the Times. I need you to leave.
Busted.
Yeah. And so she kind of kicks him out. And then this is when he calls Jean. He's freaking out. And, he kind of yells at her like, stop sounding so fucking sad. And because she's like worried about him.
Yeah.
And that causes her to go into his office and she discovers his
because he's like, I don't think I'm going to make it to the office today. And there's an ellipses there that make,
Yeah.
And yeah, she finds all the weird calendar.
Yeah,
it's like little cartoons of death on each day that he's busy.
Yeah,
until one's like the month of the complete rampage. It just looks insane. Looks like a Tool album cover.
But yeah, she's realizing what a monster he is. But he goes to I think Harry's bar, meets up with the boys. Bryce still can't get a res. But he sees Harold, his lawyer, and he goes up to him and he's like, hey, did you get my message? And Harold's like,
it was fucking hilarious.
It was fucking hilarious. He doesn't realize he's Paul Allen, or I'm sorry, he doesn't know he's Patrick Bateman. He still thinks he's Davis.
Yeah.
This completely other person that we haven't heard of named Davis.
The only problem with your joke is that Bateman would never do all of that. He's such a dork.
Yeah, he's a boring, spineless lightweight. And he's like, I'm Patrick Bateman.
I killed Paul Allen with an axe.
And I liked it. But Harold,
this isn't funny anymore.
It's not funny. I had dinner with Paul Allen in London twice. He's okay. And he goes and sits down. The boys are watching a Ronald Reagan press conference, and Bryce is upset. Like, how does he get away with? How can he live with himself lying like that? And which makes Patrick Bateman laugh his ass off because he does the same exact thing. Like, I'm just a happy camper.
When he says, I wonder what he's like inside, and Patrick's monologue says, inside doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not even an issue. Like, who cares? All that matters is what people can see. All that matters is, the external things.
Yeah, and then he starts looking around in the bar at all the yuppies he's surrounded with and says, like, he wants his pain to be inflicted on all others, but my punishment continues to elude me. This confession has meant nothing. And the movie ends.
Yeah.
That is the end. So, Chris, we've been skirting around this all episode. What do you think about this ending?
I don't think it matters, really, right? Like, it's not the kind of movie where you need to figure out, per se, like, what did transpire because we had an unreliable narrator. All we're supposed to take from it is the moral of the story, beyond the obvious metaphor for capitalism and greed and all that stuff, is that he tried to have a character arc. He tried to feel guilty, to come clean. He needed that absolution. But the true horror twist of this movie is that no one cares.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All those crimes are occurring. It's obvious that it's him. He admits it throughout the movie, but they're all too self-absorbed and narcissistic in their own way to hear that or give a fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I think is the true terror of society. It's not that people like that exist, but that other people don't care, But it does confuse me. The whole Paul Allen apartment thing confuses me more than the Paul Allens may be alive in London. Because, again, none of these people know who each other are. So that lawyer saying that he had lunch with Paul Allen, I think it's extremely likely that was someone else and he just didn't even know.
Yeah.
But the apartment thing is a little weird.
So the apartment thing is, I think you're supposed to take it. So we talked about Mary Herron.
When he killed Christie, that was Paul Allen's apartment building?
Yeah.
Where he's hiding all the bodies? Okay.
Yeah. So he's been using Paul Allen's apartment supposedly as this place where he can like kill people and not dirty up his apartment, basically.
Yeah.
But I think what you're supposed to take from it. So Mary Herron has said, like, her and Guinevere wanted the movie to be ambiguous, and Mary Herron has said that she thinks her biggest failing as director of the scene is so many people leave the theater and are like, oh, it was a dream. It was all in his head. None of the killings happened. Because they wanted it to be ambiguous, like of did it or didn't it, but so many people just walk out of the theater and automatically assume it was a dream sequence. I agree with you that he actually did kill all these people because the scene with the realtor is the one that kind of sells it for me. Because the realtor, the way that actress acts in that scene where he walks into Paul Allen's apartment, it's all cleaned up. She kind of quizzes him and she kind of immediately knows who he is. Like or at least she knows more than what she lives
bodies
on.
up.
and that's the thing is like this realtor, instead of like admitting that a bunch of murders happened in this apartment, she's willing to like wipe it away, clean it up, make this facade.
This is a $6 million apartment.
She can sell the $6 million apartment and just keep making more commodity and just put everything else under the rug. And I think that fits so well with the theming of this movie.
Yeah.
That's what I choose to believe is at least in that case.
I like that.
But there's also definitely part of this movie, because Patrick Bateman is such an unreliable narrator.
But he takes those pills at one point, so he's got some kind of diagnosed mental illness.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, like the whole like feed me a stray cat thing, like that has to be some sort of dream sequence, right? Like it has to be some sort of like, so what is real? What's actually happening? I think there's a great form of debate. And you know me, Chris, I'm a huge sucker for movies that have ambiguous endings where you can debate. I fucking love Blade Runner. I love
Inception.
The Thing. I love Inception. This movie. I love movies that you walk away where you're like, I think this happened, but it could have been this as well. There's definitely evidence for both.
Yeah.
For both options.
I agree.
And I think that's why this movie for me is so high up on my list of movies I like.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you. 4.5 stars in Letterboxd. I'm marking it right now.
Dude, hell yeah.
So I finished it this morning. I watched it this morning. So
And this was the
I hadn't
second
logged
time?
it yet. Yeah, I think it's the second time I've ever seen it.
What an adventure.
What a journey we just went on.
I know.
Well, I've got to go return some videotapes.
So good.
My name is Kit,
I'm Steve.
and this is Streaming Things. Happy streaming. I'm really planning on doing that every time.
Oh my God, please do.
Then it'll be a joke for like 3,000 people, but also anyone who loves that movie, and that's it.
Yeah. And then for the next 3 years, we'll have people messaging us every couple
What
weeks
does
like,
that mean?
why does Chris keep saying, I got to return to videotapes?
10 years from now. What's a videotape?
Yeah.